Imagine this. You have an idea, you have a plan, you have a strategy, you have a vision and some expectations of something you want to do. How cool is that? But what if all of a sudden it gets thrown off? It goes pear-shaped. It goes off the rails. What do you do? Well, let's give you an example. This podcast. I had written a script for this episode. It was over 2 hours I've been writing this, which is very long for me to write. So that was the clue number one I had to look at. But as I was writing this, there was a point I hit just not too long ago where I realized I hate this. Not the podcast, that script. It felt like trudging through mud. And so I said, well, I'm not going to continue doing that, but I do have a schedule. I have to produce this podcast. I have a day that I need to record it, and today's the day. And I thought, what if I toss that script away and just go wherever the energy takes me, wherever spirit takes me? And that's what's going to happen. That's what you get, lucky listener or viewer. But this is a great teaching point, because what do you do when things go off the rails, when they go pear-shaped? What do you do when your plans are thwarted from within or without? How do you carry on? How do you go on and still do the things you want to do? That's a good question. My name is Paul Silva. The podcast is Seared, Stories from the Stove podcast, and I'm going to be talking about what to do when things don't go as planned, and perhaps the joy of that. We'll see. All right, grab a snack, and we'll catch you soon. All right, hello, bichachos. Welcome to this episode of Seared. I hope you've hydrated. I hope you got the snack that you needed. I don't know, whatever it is, gluten, dairy, sugar, sulfite, nut, soy-free something. I don't know. What is that, an ice cube? I don't know what's left. But I wish you well. I hope you're doing well. So here's the thing. I'm going to jump right into this. This episode, this is very meta. And this is not to be self-indulgent. This is not to, a lot of navel gazing. I have a lot of navel here, by the way. Not navel gazing. Anytime I talk, and this is the whole point of this episode, of this podcast, in fact, anytime I share something about myself, it's not necessarily about myself, even though my name's all over it. It's more about relating. And that's kind of how I've been in my writings, my blogs, other podcasts, on social media, anything like that, is me relating something within me and hopefully you finding a connection with that. And that's always how I've operated. It's the idea of that, for me, healing myself is a way that I can help you heal yourself, however way that shows up, whether it's, mind, body, soul, because it's all connected. And so in sharing, it's not me venting, because the difference between those is venting is very close-minded and it's one way and it's blaming everyone, as opposed to sharing, which is coming from more of an open-minded place, right? It's seeing perhaps where did I fit in with this, and what's my responsibility in this situation, and then learning from that. Whereas venting is just, it's the same old, and there's no room for change. And so with this particular episode, this is me explaining and sharing how this came about. The fact that I'm talking to you right now without the usual script in front of me or partially up here is very weird, and it's odd, but freeing at the same time. And that's going to be part of what I'm going to be talking about. As I write because I like things to be concise. I like things to be timely, and I want to make sure that I can convey whatever it is I want to convey, right? And part of my storytelling is also the solution, how I fixed or, conquered, or whatever it is, how I dealt with something. And all of that is important. I want to get all of this to you, the listener, the viewer, in a way that's not boring. It doesn't take you away from the main message. It's not meandering. I could do all those things left to my own devices, but that's a story, see? Even as I'm saying that, I'm like, how true is that? And we all have stories. We all have things that we tell ourselves that just simply are not true, but we hold on to them because it's a history of it. We have a history that we've written. It's like writing a chapter, and we just keep going and rewriting over the same words, and then rewriting. And there's a thickness to it, and there's a weight to it. And so we hold on to that. We clutch that harder because it must mean something, because it has a lot of weight, which is silly. So the idea that I cannot create something useful for you without having it mapped out and scheduled and printed and all that is a story. Now, why do I hold on to that story? Why have I been looking at that? It's because there's fear. There's fear. There's always fear. And my fear is that I'm going to look stupid or sound stupid, or I'm going to come across, like some goofball or whatever it is. I have these fears. And so the best way to comfort and console them and to coddle them is to write script, and just leave it be like that, which has been helpful. But there are times like this right now where this complete breakdown for me, where I just couldn't even stand to look at the words on the page. It's, in a way, a test. And we all get tests. And we all get to a choice point, a fork in the road, where we have to decide, am I going to continue with the fear, or am I going to continue, am I going to face the fear, or am I going to continue down the same old path where it doesn't get you anywhere? It's circular. Whereas moving through the fear, you go into the unknown, and that's another fear to add on top of it. And so for me in this case, it's like, am I going to ramble? Is this going to be pointless? Are they going to get bored? And my answer is, who cares? So what? If you've turned off already, well, you're not going to hear the rest of this, and there might be some gold. It's gold, Jerry, gold. Certain people of my vintage might remember that from Seinfeld. But it's moving through the fear that we get the rewards. It's what's that quote? Was it the cave that you fear is where you find the treasure, or something like that? I don't have it quite eloquently as that. But for myself, even doing this and being self-conscious of me doing this, it's helping me. It's freeing me, because who knows, maybe from this point on, these are just all ad-libbed, or maybe not, or maybe it's a little bit of both. I don't know. But you're watching in real time me moving through something that I've always been afraid of, which is speaking off the cuff. Because another story I've always said, I'm 53, and probably 50 of those years, okay, maybe not, maybe 40, I've always said that I am a terrible speaker, but I'm a great writer. I am a great writer. I'm a very good writer. But I've always downplayed the ability to speak, because in my head it was very binary. Either you're a good speaker or you're a good writer, and that's it. You're one of two camps, which is, again, ridiculous as I say that out loud. But again, we all have these stories that percolate and just come back up and drift back down, come back up and drift back down. And in doing so, we rob ourselves of the opportunities given to us. We pull ourselves away from situations and opportunities that can help grow us. It's easier to sit on the throne of comfort than step into the wild, which is where so many really cool things happen, and you meet some great people, and who knows what's out there waiting for you. And as I'm processing this, I wonder to myself, in what other areas have I been holding back and still holding back? Like, this is just a little podcast. I mean, whatever. It's not big. It doesn't have a lot of numbers. Not a lot of people listen. I'm very grateful, by the way, that you're listening or watching. I'm not downplaying that. And my apologies if I did come across that way. But it's not the end of the world, really. But I'm wondering, and this is the question I pose to you, dear listener, dear viewer, is where are you holding back in your life? Where are you clutching onto the stories instead of writing something new? Where are you playing small when you should be stepping in to the bigness of who you were meant to be? Where are you pulling your punches? And I'm just wondering, already what's come to mind are a few places. You know, in my business, in how I show up, maybe on social media, how I show up in my community, with my kids. Am I holding back because the fear of XYZ prevents me from growth? And that growth, and you know what it's like. When you finally do something and you overcome a fear, you're like, oh, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. Why did I hold on for 2 months, 2 years, 2 decades? When all the time it was up here, right in your head, right in your noggin, the thick skull. I can only speak for myself. And so playing into these ideas is just another way of retracting and contracting. So this is the whole point of, in terms of self-development, personal development, coaching, whatever it is creating a new way of seeing yourself, creating new beliefs, creating new thoughts, because you can't control people, places, things, all that kind of stuff, right? What you can control is your response to them, and you can also control what thoughts you have. Like today, someone asked me on socials, like, hey, how's your day? Is it good? I said, I decided today was going to be a great day. And that's what I said. And guess what? Because I planted that thought in my own mind, guess what? The whole day's been great. Even this, when I was like, you don't like my... I was like, no, cool, but we're still gonna march on. And after I'm done this, and when I edit and all that, it's still gonna be great. It's still gonna be a great day. Just because I've decided that. If I thought, it's going to be a crappy day, it's going to be all shit, guess what? When I got to the point today where I thought, this script sucks and all that, I would have been beating myself up. I would have said, I told you this sucked. I told you this day was going to be crap. Right? You become what you think. And so how can you then plant in a new belief, a new way of seeing things, a new story? My story is that I'm a great writer and I'm a good speaker. That's it. That's my story now. Because I got to create that, because the other one wasn't working for me anymore. I'm speaking now. It's fine. I don't need that script. Threw it out. Well, it's on my hard drive, so I didn't really throw it out. You know what I'm saying? Metaphorically, I threw it out. I might polish it up and use it somewhere else. Who knows? Maybe a blog post. But we get to create the new story. You get to do that. There's no one saying that you can't recreate who you are. It's that simple. And we make it so freaking hard. And then we blame everything and everyone, and we go get down on ourselves. And I was like, we have the choice. We just choose to go on the other path, the comfort side, comfort in, instead of like, what's over there? And the what's over there always has something promising and fantastic. And yet we don't go there, or we don't go there often. Isn't that wild? Isn't that just absolutely mind-blowing? That always, given the choice between comfort and fear, we will almost always go to comfort, knowing through fear is some pretty cool shit. It's like, I will never understand that about ourselves. I will never understand it about why we do that. And I say we because I know I do it, but I've spoken to so many people in professional development, personal development, and coaching, and in therapy, and online recovery, and in like just everything. And everyone has the same thing. Everyone tells the same story. Yes, I'm like that too, Paul. But it doesn't matter why we do it. I mean, there are some reasons, etc. The lizard brain. But we have a choice. You have a choice. What will it be? Will it be comfort, or will it be growth? All right. I can see what comes up on the next break. But right now, grab a latte, grab a matcha tea, grab a Snickers, whatever you want, and we're going to finish up. All right, welcome back. I hope you've had a lovely time. Maybe it was a bio break. Maybe you needed to go number one. I don't know. I don't know. Where was that voice? It's kind of how I talk to my dogs. All right. I had some electricians come in last summer, and I have 2 dogs, Bandit and Tulip, and I was doing my kind of talk to my dogs, and I forgot they were there because the electricians were there so much. I just forgot that they were there. And the one electrician I looked at him, and he looked at me, and I was like mortified inside, and he goes, "If you don't talk to your dogs like that, you don't deserve them." I'm like, dude, thank you. So there you go. Anyway, what came up for me are 2 things while you were on break, while you were doing your thing. And we don't need to share that. What you did, that is. One was personal responsibility. So a lot of times when I say things like this, like you have the choice and all that, a lot of times it'd be like, well, you don't know my life. Like, this, and this, and I was, and they go into detail, and I'm like, okay, and I'm sorry, that sounds awful and everything. But the understanding is this, and this is, I don't know if I want to go into there. It gets murky. I'll just quickly glance over it. There's a difference between being victimized and being a victim. And a lot of people, I notice when they're struggling hard, is they conflate the two. They to them, it's the same thing. And they get very defensive about it. And I understand why, because I was there too. But there is a difference between victimized and victimhood. And we do have a choice. Even if you're in one of the worst possible situations, which I hope no one here is, but it's how we respond to that, where we're at. That's where we have freedom. That's where we have freedom. And so no matter what your situation, that's the personal responsibility part, right? Like, if someone beat me up, that's obviously, I was victimized. I was just minding my own business. Someone, boom, walloped me. Okay. That's on them. Absolutely. 100%. Now, when I replay that over and over, when I allow myself to relive that, refeel that, sentere is Latin to feel, re is to do again. So when I refeel it, I start to resent. And that's where resentments build. That resenting, that refeeling, that's on me. That's on me. Sorry. And so I may have been victimized, but it's up to me if I want to see myself as a victim. I can see myself as a survivor, right? And again, this is where people get very angry and very defensive, and I'm not here to argue that. That's just how I see it. C'est la vie. The personal responsibility part is taking full responsibility of something, a situation or whatever, even if it's 1%, even if you had 1% to do with that whole situation, own that 1%, period. And so again, going back to this podcast, this episode, and how it sucked and all that, I could have blamed all sorts of things. I wrote it. It was my idea. I take full responsibility. It was 100%. No one told me to write about whatever it is I was writing about. No one is forcing me to do this podcast. No one's forcing me to record it on a certain day. So this is 100% me. And so I take that. I'm like, yeah, that was me. And it relieves me of anything else. I'm not going to blame my kids that I have to go pick them up and do this. I don't have to blame that the dogs were extra needy today. I don't have to blame that I made, my wife lunch, and that goes away. And that makes your life easier when you have that inner peace going, I own it. Mea culpa. Your ego takes a hit. Big time. But then when that goes away, and it does, it just, and that's the personal responsibility part. Just own it. Own it. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. Do I bat 1,000 on this? No. There's times I still want to blame because it's hard to look at myself and go, yeah, Paul, you're a bit of a knucklehead. You did this and this. Which, by the way, don't call yourself a knucklehead. Self-compassion, my friends. Self-love. I'm still learning. Now, the second part I wanted to share quickly is, and this is something I used to do when I was running, when I was training for marathons. So you can imagine these long hauls, and I was training in the winter during hailstorms and ice storms and all this kind of stuff. And I believe it was Eckhart Tolle who said this. And he said, when you're kind of stuck in a sticky situation, is act as if you planned for this. Right? Even when I said it just now, I'm like, oh my God, that's so good. Act as if you planned for it. So when I was going for these runs, when I got to the hard part, and there was always a hard part in these long runs when you're doing 20, 30K runs. I don't know what it is in miles. Just y'all down there in the States, just was it you and Sierra Leone and Libya, I think, are the only countries that use, I don't know, imperial? I don't know. No, that's Fahrenheit, sorry. Anyway, get with it. Metric. I would get to the hard part, and when I was ready to stop or whatever, I'm like, I planned for this. This is what I wanted. I wanted to get myself so tired and so sore. This is it. Everything I've been doing up until now is just fluff. This is the real run. And I would do it. I mean, it's a fancy way of saying embrace the suck, really. If that works for you, embrace the suck. But when I would do that, again, it made things easier. It just did, because I saw things differently. And so when things did, like things that I wasn't liking very much or expecting, I was like, it's like expect the unexpected. Whatever happened, I just pretend this is what I wanted. Yay! How cool is that? Yay! It's what I wanted. And when you do that, it just shifts your mind. It shifts how you see things. And when you see things differently, you have different emotions and you have different actions and you get different results. So just thinking how this feels shifted how my training went, because I embraced the suck rather than, oh, this sucks. Again, victimhood. But when I sat in that, like, this is empowering. I know it's very buzzwordy. Empowering, knowing that I can do this. And I would do it. And I'd move through that. And that helped me with my training. I didn't win the race, obviously. I'm a back of the packer. But I finished it. And I finished my training. It was great. And so when you kind of combine all of these elements of personal responsibility, of embracing the suck, of not playing victim, and what we talked about earlier with, just shifting, defining the freedom of going through the fear. It makes such a deep, powerful impact. Now, this is no matter what's happening in your life. It could be just a small inconvenience, and you can kind of whip through these things in your head for a couple seconds. Or if it's something that's much bigger happening in your life, a loved one who's very ill, or a breakup of a relationship, or whatever, the big stuff that the messy stuff that we deal with. These kinds of things help. I'm not saying the 100% cure, because it's not something, the human condition is not to be cured. It's to be experienced and to learn through. But it does make a difference. And so when things are not going your way, I want you to think of these things. I want you to think of you throwing away the old script that you have, just like I threw away my script. I want you to throw away the old stories. I want you to throw away the old ways that you handled things, because there's a new script, a new way of doing things, a new, pulling from spirit, pulling from your own strength, because you're stronger than you think. And that's where the magic happens. That's where you get to create. Just like right now, I've just created this podcast with no words in front of me, just a desire to shift my way of thinking. Tear of joy. Anyway, I wish you well. Thank you so much. And of course, please subscribe if you're watching YouTube. I'd love to. I'm still not at 100, you buggers. Share, like, comment. And if you're listening on iTunes or Spotify or whatever, please leave a review, some stars, whatever, because I would love to get this out and going. And you know what? I think at some point I'm going to get guests on here too. So I think that's going to be really cool. I'm going to open the things up for myself, so you don't have to hear me go bah, 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 just alone. But please share, and anything you can do to help, that would be super funkin' groovenstein. Also, if there's anything, you can check out my website, www.therealpaulsilva.com. That's where you'll see what I do, how I do it, my coaching, and how I can help you do these very same shifts that we talked about here in the podcast. So, with that, kitchen's closed. Now scram.